All right, welcome to the volleyball camera tutorial for the CBU Media Production team. The goal of this video is to give you an insight into what it looks like to operate the cameras for our volleyball broadcasts. This is more than likely your first time jumping into a broadcast running cameras, so we want to give you an overview of what to expect when you get here and things to look for once you are in the position that you're in. So before we get started, I just want to point out that volleyball has a very specific order of camera shots. It's basically a routine that we go through. Um, I'll go over that in more detail in a little bit, but you'll notice that as we move along in the broadcast and you gain more experience, you'll be able to predict what's going to happen each camera shot. And so keeping that in the back of your mind is going to be very helpful. And then the other thing that's unique to volleyball is that all the cameras as of right now, spring 2023, all cameras are pan tilt zoom cameras or PTZ cameras. And a feature set of those is that we have presets on the controller that will help you get to specific locations quickly. So knowing what your presets are before the start of the broadcast is really, really important, and making sure that your pan and zoom speeds are smooth. But with that, let's jump in to basically the layout of where our cameras are at. So volleyball happens in Van Dyne Gym. However, the broadcast is 9 times out of 10 produced from the Fowler Event Center in the control room. So we've got a 5-camera shoot with volleyball. Camera 1 is going to be our main follow camera. Camera 2 is going to be our tight follow, which basically means they're getting ISO shots or hero shots of players, and then basically going to their gameplay shot and getting a similar shot to camera 1, but much tighter. Camera 3 and 4 are on the baselines, and they're have a unique set of camera shots that they're getting as well. All of that will be explained as we kind of go through this this keynote here. And then camera 5 is our net camera. This is a fixed camera. Nobody operates it. It's used primarily for replays and for beauty shots. So again, even though the game is happening in Van Dyne Gym, it will be produced from the control room in the Fowler Event Center. So when you see what camera you're scheduled for, keep in mind kind of which angles you'll need to pay attention to as we go through this keynote. All right, so starting off with camera 1, this is our main follow camera. It's pretty much wide the entire time, and it's going to be following the play as it happens from left to right or right to left. And so because of that, it's really important that the zoom and pan speeds on your controller are set to where you're comfortable and operating, making sure that we're predicting when the ball is going to be hit over the net, which means that we can kind of have a smooth pan to the left or pan to the right before the ball's even hit. And I'll go over some examples of that in just a second. But basically from the serve to the end of the point, that's when camera 1 is live. If we get a long rally, we're not going to be cutting in cameras 2, 3, 4, or 5. It stays on 1 the entire time until the point is over. So it's really important that camera 1's operator has a always live mentality. And then when we're not in game coverage, so like if we're going into a timeout or we're going in and out of a commercial break, that's a time where camera 1 can get tight shots of either the bench or specific players if we have an element we need to do. Just depends on what is needed in the moment, and the director will help you figuring out what that is. But it doesn't mean you're just going to stay wide the entire time. You do need to get some tight shots at certain moments. All right, so in this photo example, we have basically an establishing shot from camera 1. It's a little blurry because the camera was getting ready to pan over to the right as the player was hitting the serve. But this is the framing you want to be looking for as far as your gameplay shot. So a couple things to point out is that It's wide enough to see the serve on the left-hand side, but then it's also wide enough to see the initial side of the receiving team. So what I mean by that is right now, we've got a nice picture of the person that's doing the serve right here. We can see the entire away team, but then we can also start to see what the defense is looking like over here on the right-hand side as they receive the serve. And like I said, this camera at the moment was in the middle of panning this way. So that's why we have a little bit of blur here, but this is essentially where you want to start. Things you want to watch out for is if, say this person that's serving was actually over here on the left-hand side, and they tend to kind of go back into this area. So you want to make sure that you're never cutting that person off. We pan to the left to follow them, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So, and the other thing too is that the tilt is centered on the court. So we're not seeing too much of the scores table down here at the bottom. And we're not seeing the ceiling up here at the top. That's really important that, basically right now this is cutting the complete middle of the screen. And as this camera were to pan, this CBU logo will be pretty center. So this is really good framing here. And as I said earlier, this camera was in the middle of zooming. And what I mean by that, or panning, excuse me, you want to be able to prepare to pan as the ball is about to hit over the net. So in volleyball, it takes 3 hits and then the ball has to be hit over the net. So you can kind of predict when the ball is going to be hit back and forth. Sometimes it's before the 3. In rare cases, it's a 4th hit. But you need to be able to predict kind of when that ball is coming over. And by being wide like this, it allows you to have a little bit of a delay reaction to following the ball as it goes over. But we want to try and predict it as much as we can. And then this is what the pan would have looked like as the ball went over the net and is now on the right side of the court. So pretty much the ending shot, as I'll call it, it looks exactly like the beginning shot. So if we look here, the same amount of negative space on the left side and the right side as this shot. So you want to do your best to try and have those shots match as much as possible. It's very pleasing for the viewer to have that symmetry. But in some rare cases, or not very rare cases, the ball will actually end up kind of over here. So if there's a bad pass or something like that, and the ball ends up coming way out here, or even more importantly, onto this side of the court, you want to make sure to pan and follow the play as much as possible. And in that case, you could even use your zoom to allow, like, say, for example, this player right here were to run over and go get that pass, and they hit it all the way over the net. That would allow you the opportunity to use your zoom and pan at the same time to keep the play within the frame. What we're not suggesting is that you chase after the ball as it goes into the ceiling. So sometimes they'll hit the ball really high and it'll go close to the ceiling. You don't have to tilt up to follow it. But if you use your zoom, you can do a good job of keeping the ball in play, keep the ball in the frame as much as possible without using your tilt. So that's what we're looking for as far as your panning from left to right. So here's a video example of what that'll look like. And this is really good panning technique. So I'll kind of commentate as this is playing. But that's a shot from camera 2, and now we're on camera 1. So as you see, they're predicting as the ball is going to go over to the left. You'll see the predict here going to the right. So that was a great follow there. I'll actually play that one more time so we can kind of see that. So notice how it comes over to the right, and you'll see the prediction coming to the left. So that's great. So they've got 1 hit, 2 hit. Now the ball is coming over on this one. So they've predicted the hit is coming over to the right. So that's exactly what we want to do for our gameplay shots. That's good technique. The pan and didn't use any zoom on that specific example, but the pan was very smooth. It was predicted. So great job by the operator on that one. And then for camera 1, this is kind of just our last little photo example here. So all the time the director is going to ask for ISO or hero shots or if we're going in and out of timeout, which this looks like it was a timeout, we're going to want tight shots of the benches. So the director will let you know which bench to get or which player to get. But when they do ask for them, you should have a preset set for these shots that you can use to get to that location. And then from there, you can use your pan and zoom to kind of get the best shot possible. One thing that I like to point out is that, here we're getting a lot of reactions from a lot of people. If that's what we're looking for in the break, we're not talking about a specific player, then this is great. We're seeing kind of the emotion of the team and kind of telling the story. But as soon as this team kind of, enters out back onto the court and the director has cut off your camera, you want to make sure to get set and ready for your gameplay shot, depending on which side of the court the serve is happening. So that's camera 1. All right, camera 2 is going to be our tight follow. The main goals of camera 2 are very similar to camera 1. However, like I said at the intro, there's a routine and basically a way that we cut cameras every single time in volleyball. And how it's going to happen is right before the serve happens, we're going to cut to a tight shot from camera 2 of the server. Camera 2 will follow the server as they jump and serve, so you want to make sure that you have enough room for that. And then from there, we'll go to camera 1. So what camera 2 does during all this, they get that initial shot of the server, but then they go to a tighter follow, which is more at the center of the net. And I'll show you an example of that in a second, where you're following from left to right, similar to how 1 is doing, but in a much tighter fashion, so that we can use it for replay. And then another thing that's really important is after a play is done, it's really crucial that you're paying attention to who had the kill or the best pass or the block, whatever it is, so that you can zoom in and follow that player and get a hero shot, because we'll probably use that shot either before or after replay, or sometimes both. And then also keeping in mind that even though we're going to commercial break or we've got a timeout, it's important to keep shooting. So find some ISO or hero shots, whether it's of a specific player or of the team, whatever makes sense in that moment, and the director will help you out with that. All right, so in this photo example, this is what the kind of ISO shot of the server should look like. So this shot could be a little bit tighter, but it's a good example of you want to leave a lot of room for that serve to happen. And so that player will eventually start running this way, and then will jump. So you want to make sure you have enough headroom. You want to make sure that you have enough space here, that you've got a delay in your pan, because it's sometimes hard to predict when they're going to start running, but it's important that this player doesn't get cut off as they're serving. So you'll see an example of what that looks like in video form in just a minute. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is that we've got these graphics down here at the bottom. Unlike some of our other sports, most of the graphics pop off of the mini board like this, so you don't have to worry too often about like a graphic that's coming in on the left-hand side. But it is important to know that like this mini board is going to get a little bit bigger, so keep that in mind when you're shooting. We don't want to cover people's faces or anything like that if they're the subject of the shot. So here's going to be a video example of what I was just talking about, of how you follow the serve. And then I want you to watch, you'll see the full point, and then you'll see that the broadcast goes to a replay. And I want you to see that from camera 2's perspective, that's what the replay is of. So you can see how they follow from left to right and what they're getting. And then I want you to notice how quickly out of the replay are we getting a hero shot. So as soon as you see the broadcast kind of go into a replay, you're already getting the hero shot of whoever did, the kill or the pass or the block, whatever it is. So let's take a look at this video. So nice pan from left to right, didn't cut off the ball. Okay, so there was a point there. So we've cut to a baseline camera here. We're getting ready for a replay. there goes the replay. So here's the angle from camera 2. So notice how they were panning left to right, and then right away they have the server with a hero shot. So that's how quickly volleyball can work. Oftentimes we don't have a whole lot of time between the end of a play and the start of another play. So we have to quickly get to our camera shots when necessary, do replays when we can. But that's why it's important to always be thinking ahead of the broadcast and what you should be shooting next. Here's a photo example of a hero shot. So if we have enough time, if you're able to get it, if there's been a big play, big pass, something like that, this is kind of what you want your hero shot to look like. So it's tight enough to where we can see emotion, but not so tight where if they move quickly, they're out of the frame. Your director may ask for this if the server has served multiple times. So we don't always cut to camera 2 on the server. Like sometimes a server will go on a 5 serve run. And if we were cutting to camera 2 every single time, that would get very repetitive. So sometimes it's important to see other players that are, helping out the team in big ways, or we'll even show a tight shot of the server from one of the other cameras. So your director will help with this. They'll let you know, like, hey, you can actually get an ISO shot of them or anything like that. But just be keeping in the back of your mind that, we've seen that shot a few times. And this, for example, maybe this player right here who's kind of our subject, or maybe it's all three if they're blocking, if they've had a good run and they've gotten some points for us, maybe it's time to isolate them and give them their 15 seconds of fame. So yeah, just keep that in mind as we move forward through the broadcast. And then moving on to camera 3 and 4. So these are our baseline cameras. So 3 and 4 have to pay attention to which side. Actually, everybody has to pay attention to which side the ball is on, but specifically 3 and 4, things change depending on what side the ball is on. So if the ball is starting on the opposite side of the court, a tight shot of the server before the start of the play, so similar to what camera 2 does. And then as the serve is coming in, you're going to do a pull to get to your gameplay shot. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. But that changes if the ball is on the near side of the court to your camera. So for example, if you're operating camera 3, which is on the left side of the court, if the ball is being served from the right side of the court, then you're getting a tight shot, you're doing a pull, going to your gameplay shot. But if the ball is on the left side of the court, which is closest to your physical camera, then you're actually going to start wide. And you're going to follow the serve kind of with your tilt as they serve the ball, and then you'll do a push to establish your gameplay shot. Again, I'll show you examples of all this in just a second. Just like all the other cameras, as soon as the play is done, getting a hero or isolated shot of the team that is closest to you at the end of the play helps out a lot. So as soon as the play is done, you want to be pushing into the team. In volleyball, whether they win or lose the point, they're going to huddle by the net, and you want to push in to get that huddle so that we can see, any type of reaction or anything like that. And then hero and ISO shots of players or the bench during scripted elements or in and out of commercial break are helpful for the broadcast as well. So here's an example of if the ball was on the far side of the court from your physical camera. So at this point, the operator should have a tight shot, exactly like what we have here, of the server. Notice how, we've got the graphic here at the bottom. So that's something you want to keep in mind when you're doing your framing. This could have either been a little tighter, or we've got a lot of headroom up here. There's two things you could do with that. One, it could be a little lower so that, and a little tighter if that's possible. But if not, this is actually great framing because this player's about to jump. And so not cutting off the ball, not cutting off their head could be really helpful. It just depends on the player. But another thing to keep in mind is that each controller has presets, and you'll have a preset depending on which side of the court the ball is being served from. So right now it looks like this is being served from the left side of the court, as far as in reference to where the camera is located. But if the ball was being served on the right side of the court, you would have a preset for that to help you get there quicker, and then you can use your pan and zoom from there. And like I said, you want to end with a wide gameplay shot for replay. You don't want to stay this tight throughout the entirety of the play. All right, so here's going to be a video example of pulling from the ISO of the serve. You're going to see it in real time. This is not a replay. So this will give you an idea of what that pull should look like as they're serving. So right there's a nice pull. Could have been a little tighter, but this is great. We go right into gameplay. So that's what we're talking about. I'll play that one more time for you. So you notice we're doing a pull. We're starting to reveal the defensive side of the court, and we're right into gameplay. And what you can't see in this clip is that at that point, you'd be setting up for your gameplay shot, which is what this looks like. So this is nice and wide. This is great for replay because it's wide enough to see everything that's happening in the court. For example, if the ball were to be passed into this area, it would just be a simple tilt, maybe a little bit of zoom to keep the ball in play for the camera. But it's also not so wide that we can't see any detail that's happening up at the net. So there's a kind of like a fine line there that you want to make sure that you're staying tight enough, but also wide enough to make sure you're following the play. And then something to just keep in mind is even though you've established yourself on this gameplay shot, you don't want to just kind of set it at this angle for the play and then kind of just forget it. You want to be following the play as well. So if the ball were to be moving, this direction, you want to be panning to the left. If the ball moves this direction, pan to the right. If it starts coming closer to you, that's when you want to pull and maybe use some tilt. Just kind of depends on the situation. But you don't want to just kind of set it up on this static shot and just kind of forget it. You want it to be fluid and you want it to be moving. This is an example of what a hero shot of a team or a bench may look like. So in this example, this player had scored a lot of points and is celebrating after being substituted. So that's what the storyline was at the time. And so following this player as they celebrate with their team helps tell the story of the broadcast. So hero shots could be something like this, which is showing a player interacting with their team, or it could be a single player. Just kind of depends on the situation, and the director will do their job of letting you know kind of what to look for. But it's also very helpful for you to keep an eye on what's happening in your side of the court so that you can go to these shots and kind of sell the shot to the director for them to take to broadcast. All right, so here's going to be a video example. I want you to see here that this is a great push after the point is scored to the player who scored the point. And then we've got a good follow of the player on the opposite side coming off the court. So you're going to see this from both sideline cameras. One sideline camera is doing a great push to the team. The other camera is getting that bench shot from the example before. So this is camera 2. And then we cut to 1. Perfect. So right now we're going to cut to 4. This is pushing to the team celebration. And then camera 3 is actually going to follow off that player that scored that main point there. We're seeing the reactions. That's great storytelling. And then we're back to camera 2. So you just want to keep in mind what's happening on the court, what's the story, and help the director tell that story by getting the camera shots that are needed. Okay, so at this point, we're going to do a couple examples of some full gameplay, and this will give you an idea of what it all looks like when it comes together. And we're going to do 2 different examples. One's going to be with a replay from camera 2, and one's going to be a replay from one of the baseline cameras. So we'll start off with the one from camera 2. This is a really long rally, so this is important if you're a camera 1 operator to watch how the pan is anticipated, as well as the smoothness of zoom and pan in this example. And then camera 2 operators be watching for what camera 2 would be shooting during during gameplay for replay. So right now, camera 2's got the great shot of the player that's about to serve. Great follow as they go to serve. Camera 1 is now live. So camera 1's getting ready for the ball to be hit to the other side. Notice how camera 1 didn't pan up and follow the ball there. It's really important. That could have been a little bit smoother on the pan, but that was a great anticipatory pan there. Really good follow there. Starting to predict the pan to the right. And now we can predict the left. Great block. So that was a great follow. And then now we see the hero shot from baseline cameras. And we're into replay. So see how 2 is kind of doing a similar thing, but it's much tighter. We can't see the scorer's table. We see very little crowd, but we get a nice replay. And then we're back into 2. So see how quickly things move. That's a really important thing with volleyball. We're always on to the next thing. And then from this example, we'll see a replay from the baseline cameras. I'll do a similar thing of commentating over this. So we've got a nice shot from 2 here on the serve. They're anticipating the run up. Great follow from 2 and 1 here. Great kill. So we've got a nice push into the team here. It would have been great to have a hero shot there, but that's okay. And then now you're seeing it from the gameplay action. So right there, that would have been a great time for the baseline camera to kind of pan slowly to the right. But you see that nice hero shot at the end. And then you see this nice pull from the baseline cameras as the serve comes in. And we've got a celebratory moment there. Great push from the baseline cameras to the hero shots. Great hero shot there. Great tight shot from the other baseline camera. And then from there, they would do the pull as the serve comes into play. So that's some examples of what you're kind of striving for when you're shooting volleyball. Just a couple final thoughts before we wrap up this video. It's really easy to get wrapped up in, should I be zooming? Should I be panning? But really the most important thing is to follow the gameplay. So follow the ball, make sure that that's in play, make sure the players are in play so that we can see what's happening on the court. Because this is the only angles that the viewer has, is what we give them. So for that reason, you want to make sure that you're keeping it simple. Don't try and do too much, but as you gain a little bit of confidence, you can definitely add a little bit of I call it the sprinkle effect, where you're kind of just adding a little bit more on top of it with those pans and zooms. When you first get here to the event center, you're getting ready for the game, you definitely want to make sure that all your presets are working properly, that you know where your presets are at, especially if you're working on one of the controllers that don't have labels for the presets, they just have numbers. Know what your presets are, and then make sure that your pan and zoom speeds are all dialed in and you like the speed of them so it's nice and smooth. You want to pay attention to how the game is going and predict the next shot. We've definitely talked a lot about that with camera 1 and camera 2. You can predict when the ball is about to go over the net and kind of give like a little anticipatory pan to either side depending on where the ball is going. Remember the flow of the broadcast. Most of the time we're going to start with a tight shot of the server, then we're going to go to 1, then we're going to go to some type of reaction shot, whether it's from the baseline cameras or a hero shot from camera 2. Might throw in a replay there, and then we're right back into a tight shot of the server, and then back into 1 following the play. It moves very, very quickly. And so because of that, you definitely want to keep replay in mind. Whatever you're shooting at the moment, especially if your camera's 2, 3, and 4, be thinking, how would this look in a replay? Is this going to be helpful for replay? Is it not going to be helpful for replay? Because that is the main priority of cameras 2, 3, and 4. As alongside of getting hero shots and ISO shots, replay is a big factor for those cameras. So again, we're really excited that you're joining us for volleyball. I think you're going to really enjoy this sport. It moves quickly, and it's always constantly moving. But I think that given these examples, I think you're ready to go. If you have any questions, make sure to ask your director when you get there. And let's have some fun with some volleyball broadcasts.